Another week of camp done. It's flying by. This thing is flying by.
Well, we were all excited coming off the Washington joint practice. We were all excited coming off the Washington Commanders preseason game number 1 against the New England Patriots. We were all excited after joint practice number 1 against the Vikings because we were talking a lot, and Phil Perry even talked about it earlier this week. He was a little nervous that they might get overwhelmed by this Vikings team in that first joint practice. That did not happen.
Yeah.
Seems like that might have happened yesterday, though.
I think the Vikings came back, and that's what you see a lot in these joint practices when there's two, is one team wins the first day, the other team goes into the meeting room, sees the film, gets chewed out, comes back, responds. I think that's what you saw from the Vikings yesterday. That doesn't mean that you just ignore it from the Patriots' point of view. I think there are some things you point to that worry you. I actually think there is one maybe encouraged, and I'm not there, so this is, feel a little naked doing this when I'm talking about the practice I didn't see. But based on the reporting, and I trust the people, obviously, that are down there, I think there might actually be one bright spot from yesterday's practice. So it's not that you don't take anything from it, but that can be how these things tend to go. And now we see O'Connell said that J.J. McCarthy's not going to play. So I'm going to guess some of the Vikings starters aren't playing. We'll see if maybe the Patriots starters play a little bit just so they don't leave Minnesota on that low note. But, it was, I think, a lot of what you worried about getting exposed with this team maybe got exposed yesterday.
All right, before I ask you if you're going to hit the panic button and how hard you're going to hit the panic button, even though I know you said you had one positive coming out of this practice, let's get a recap here from Greg Bedard on yesterday. Take a listen.
But I thought for the most part, the Patriots offense did pretty well. They ran the final minute. The final period was 1 minute left on the clock, one touchdown, sort of starting on around midfield. Drake May's possession did not get off to a very good start at all. 93 came up, sack up the middle, probably against Michael Wenu. Completion to Mac Hollins. Actually, they ruled it incomplete. I could have sworn he got it in on the sideline, but that was an incompletion. 15 came on a sack against Morgan Moses on 3rd and 10, so that left them 4th and 15. They had a completion to Mac Hollins that converted, and then with 8 seconds, they clocked it. There was a false start on Will Campbell. Then from about 30, 35 yards out, 4th down, 8 seconds left. Drake May put up a jump ball for Kayshon Boutte, and he came down with it for a touchdown.
All right, so Greg, believe it or not, even with that, was more positive than the vast majority of the reports that were coming out of yesterday. We had Phil Perry over at NBC Sports Boston talking about the struggles with the offensive line, says it was a rough day overall for the line. 7 sacks appeared to be given up by the starters. Will Campbell especially, a particularly hard time yesterday. He allowed 3 sacks, 2 on outside moves, 1 on a bull rush. Was also flagged for a false start in the hurry-up 2-minute portion of practice as well. Jared Wilson, the left guard, and we had mentioned this, by the way, before we had left with Zoe at the end of the show, not running with the ones. Left practice early, actually, yesterday.
So not running with the ones, didn't practice.
We're not sure whether or not he was getting demoted to begin with there because he was initially at practice to start, and then Ben Brown takes over. So we'll wait and see what's going on there. But Phil Perry also talking about how Wilson's had a tough couple of weeks after a really hot start to camp. So overall, what's your level of concern with this offensive line right now?
It's not insignificant. I think some of what you saw is the Vikings front is good, and Jonathan Grenard's a good player who got to Will Campbell, so you got to weigh that in. If Wilson is not a starting caliber player, it becomes a lot stronger because, all right, Ben Brown, I think, is a solid center. Like, if he has to start a few games for you, that's not the worst thing in the world. I don't know about him to starting left guard. It's a position he's never really played in the NFL. Garrett Bradbury, by all accounts, had kind of a rough week out there in Minnesota. Now, those guys know him well, but
he also might not be that good, right? Isn't that part of this?
They cut him.
Yeah.
He had a rough year last year, and they cut him. I had said back in April that a lot of people were penciling in Garrett Bradbury starting center, and my thought was it was going to be an open competition between him and Jared Wilson. Now, nobody steps up and wins the left guard job, so Jared Wilson goes over there, so that kind of changes the tone of that. But does Ben Brown re-enter the mix there? But if now you need him at left guard, what happens? And, still the concerns about Morgan Moses just with his age. So it's a lot. I go back to what I've been saying. I still think they're in a much better place than they were last year.
Okay, that's a very low bar, though.
Right,
yes.
but that's more about where they were last year than where they are now.
Right.
I have they're not going to be a top half of the league offensive line. Again, my thing is like if they could be in the top 20, I'd be ecstatic. They're not looking quite there yet. They might not be 32nd, which would technically be an improvement, but there's definitely still some warts to work through.
All right, so Bradbury's saying, by the way, prior to the first joint practice, and obviously, like you mentioned, coming over from the Vikings, this was going to be the most complicated it was going to get all year for this offensive line in terms of what Brian Flores was going to kind of throw at them over these joint practices. So I do think you have to factor that in as well. But yeah, I think there is real concern. Let me ask you another question. This is kind of a side topic as well. So is Cole Strange here kind of completely out of the mix? You think he's in trouble in terms of a roster spot? If Wilson, let's say it wasn't honestly, either way it went, right? Whether Wilson is getting demoted or whether Wilson was banged up, the fact that Cole Strange isn't back there after being an offseason award winner and having that initial left guard spot to start training camp cannot be a positive sign for him, right?
No, if you're not going to keep two backup. Well, really, you're not going to keep three backup interior offensive linemen. Caden Wallace is in his own category because he's kind of combo right guard, right tackle.
Yeah.
But the big thing, the big red flag for me with Cole Strange was when Ben Brown started playing guard. The advantage that Cole Strange had was he could play guard and center. And if you're going to be a backup on the interior, you really have to be able to play multiple positions. You usually don't have teams keeping a true backup exclusive center. Like that just doesn't really happen. But then Ben Brown starts playing guard. And so that, to me, signaled they're opening up that competition between those two guys. Now, if Ben Brown is getting the starting reps, that tells you he's ahead of Cole Strange. Right now, the thing Cole Strange probably needs to get on the roster, it could be two things. One, they keep 10 linemen. Mm-hmm. He's in their top 10. Most teams keep 9. If they keep 10, he'd probably be the 10th. The other thing would be is Garrett Bradbury, and he's, by all accounts, and just talking to him, he's bought in. He's in on the Vrabel program and all of that. But you see this sometimes with veterans. This is a guy who's a first-round pick. He's been in the league 7 years, started every game he's ever been a part of. If he finds out he's not going to start, is he somebody who asks for his release and maybe goes somewhere where he's going to have a real chance to start? Because if he's not in the picture, well, now Cole Strange is Ben Brown's your starting center, Cole Strange your backup, right? So that's kind of the math for Cole Strange right now. He's not out. He's not off the team at this point, but he's squarely on the bubble. Like, it could go either way with him, and it might be beyond his control at this point. He may need some other things to go his way.
All right, so Will Campbell, we know that Wilson and Campbell struggled during that Commanders game with the one play where the turnover with Drake May, right? Other than that, in terms of the run game and stuff like that, he excelled. Are you glass half full or glass half empty right now with Will Campbell coming off of what we just talked about with his struggles yesterday with the Vikings?
I don't know if I'm glass half full or glass half empty. There's just a trend I've recognized that when he gets beat, so that first practice where it didn't go well for him here in New England, he allowed 2 sacks and 3 pressures, which was the headline, but the thing that kind of got glossed over was that happened in the span of 4 plays. He was fine besides that. He had another one last week, which again was against Kayvon Chason, where I think he allowed 3 sacks in like 6 plays or something like that. I don't think it was 3 sacks. The number sounds high, but it was multiple sacks in the practice, and it was reported as multiple sacks in the practice, but it was in this very condensed window. It sounds like yesterday that was kind of the same thing, the false start aside.
Yep.
The pressures, it all sounded like kind of came boom, 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 and it wasn't spread out over the course of the practice. So I don't know how I feel about that. Like, okay, so for most of the day he's been good, but when it's bad, it gets bad, and he doesn't rebound quickly. Like, is it good that most of it's self-contained and there's large chunks where he's fine?
See what you're saying, yeah.
Is it worrying because it's all kind of coming in these condensed windows?
Yeah,
and
it goes off the rails quickly.
Right, if that happens in a spot in the game where it's important, so that's just I don't remember him being like that in college. Now, he really didn't get beat in college at all, so there's that element to it, but it is kind of weird that it feels like when he allows these pressures, they come in bunches, and he bounces back after. Like the Kayvon Chason one here, I think was like the first 4 plays of practice or something, or it was in the first period. And the rest of the day, he was fine. But again, you allow 2 sacks. That's going to be a storyline, especially when it happens in 4 plays. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what to make of that. But I think that's 3 instances now where it's happened, and I feel like it's something worth noting because it's becoming a bit of a pattern.
All right, brutal day for the offensive line yesterday out in Minnesota as we get ready for preseason game number 2 tomorrow.